Hi guys. Now, most people are aware of the WHO Pandemic Treaty and how all the governments are likely to sign up to it. So I'm going to take you back a little bit now to an email I wrote to our MP Peter Gibson, who's the Darlington MP. The email was dated the 23rd of May 2022. This is the first one. It's quite a long thing, so I'm going to separate this into two videos. You make your own mind up what you think of it. Don't judge me when we're reading. It's terrible to get this right, but we'll see how we get on. Dear Peter, you may be aware of concerns by a significant number of the general public in relation to the WHO plan to establish themselves as the singular controlling and guiding authority in world healthcare via the introduction of a new treaty. The proposed pandemic treaty, supported by 25 heads of government including Boris Johnson, is clearly very concerning. However, I would like to draw your attention to a potentially more imminent threat to the sovereignty of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The proposed amendments submitted by the USA to the International Health Regulations 2005, IHR for short. By way of context, I shall provide a brief timeline. 1. January 2022, a USA delegate of the Biden administration, without public awareness, submitted to the WHO proposed amendments to the IHR. Then there's a link which I'll put in the description. The Director General of the WHO, and let's just call him Ted Ross, I'm not going to mess up that name, in turn submitted the proposals to the legislative body of the WHO, the World Health Assembly, WHA, for its consideration in accordance with paragraph 1 of Article 55 of the IHR. In accordance with paragraph 2 of Article 55 of the IHR, Ted Ross also communicated the text of the proposed amendments to all state parties. Number 2. 12th of April 2022. The proposed amendments were made public. Number 3. 22nd to the 28th of May 2022. The proposed amendments will be delivered for a vote to the WHA at the 75th World Health Assembly, where the amendments are scheduled as provisional agenda items to the WHA at the 75th World Health Assembly, where the amendments are scheduled as provisional agenda items, as provisional agenda item 16.2 in Skyhooks, strengthening WHO preparedness for and response to health emergencies. Then there's another link, a PDF. If the proposed amendments are passed, they will 1. Empower Ted Ross to arbitrarily declare health emergencies in any nation on a unilateral basis and without the consent of the nation. Ted Ross will be able to declare a health crisis or an emergency based solely on his personal opinion or his consideration that there is a potential or possible threat. 2. Compromise the independence and sovereignty of all 193 United Nations member states, in brackets all members of the WHO, which would result in the WHO having power over 99.44% of the world's population. 3. Remove all obligations on the WHO and Ted Ross to consult with and to obtain verification from nation states where the possibility of a health emergency exists. The nation from within whose borders the potential emergency emanates will be rendered powerless. By deleting such language, the checks and balances placed upon the WHO and Ted Ross are removed, allowing Ted Ross to declare an emergency at his will. Number 4. Allow the WHO to take steps to collaborate with other nations and organisations worldwide to deal with the alleged emergency or crisis in a sovereign nation, even if that nation does not require or request the assistance. Number 5. Reduce the existing time frame for rejection of or reservation from the amendments from 18 months to a mere 6 months. And number 6. Allow the WHO to unilaterally develop and update early warning criteria for assessing and progressively updating the national, regional or global risk posed by an event of unknown causes or sources. 47 nations support the US authored amendments, and I assume you are aware that Great Britain and Northern Ireland are amongst that number. The IHR does not define what amounts to a health emergency. The IHR does not define what amounts to a health emergency. It's alright. Helps if I say it properly, bear with me. But it clearly goes beyond a pandemic, covering illness or medical condition irrespective of origin or source that presents or could present significant harm to humans. The WHO Constitution, which is a separate document from the IHR, does provide insight into what falls within the WHO mandate. It is extensive, like this email. When the two documents are considered together, it is quite apparent that almost any problematic situation involving the people could be considered a health emergency, and thus the WHO and Tedros could call a crisis over anything they choose. If passed, the extensive new powers are going to be vested in Tedros, who was indicted before the International Criminal Court for war crimes committed against the people of his own country, Ethiopia. In addition, Tedros has strong links to the Chinese Communist Party. Many believe that he was put in his current position of Director General as a direct consequence of that relationship. This makes the empowerment of Tedros and the WHO alarming. In light of the above, can you please provide answers to the following questions? 1. Who are the delegates from Great Britain and Northern Ireland to the WHA? Each nation is permitted up to 3 delegates with one designated chief delegate. 2. Were you aware of the proposed amendments? If so, what have you done to oppose them? 3. Do you believe that, if passed, the revised IHR could allow Tedros to arbitrarily declare a global health emergency or a regional emergency in our nation without the nation's consent? And if not, can you please provide your reasons? Number 4. If passed, do the revised regulations become legally binding in our country? Do they become law, or as treaty obligations do they not have the force of law domestically? Number 5. Please provide both the assessed contributions and the voluntary supplemental assessed contributions for Great Britain and Northern Ireland to the WHO for the last 5 years. Number 6. Do you believe that the proposed amendments are a vehicle for accelerating the timeline for the pandemic treaty? Number 7. Are you aware of any discussions regarding the sanctioning of nations who disregard the IHR and or the WHO Constitution? Number 8. Do you believe that such enhanced powers could be used to shame and therefore intimidate, ostracise and or dominate a country? Number 9. Considering the grave errors that the WHO has made during the last 2 years, not least abandoning its own recommendations and guidelines for pandemics in favour of the Chinese totalitarian model of lockdowns, masks, mandates and vaccine passports. With regard to the health and well-being of the people, do you feel it wise to vest more power in Tedros and the WHO? And if so, please provide your reasons. Number 10. Do you believe these amendments are part of the globalist agenda, the Great Reset, which is openly promoted by the World Economic Forum? Number 11. Have the proposed amendments to the IHR and the potential ramifications been discussed in Parliament? If so, can you please provide details? If not, can you please explain why discussions have not been tabled? In summary, the proposed amendments have been introduced by stealth, with the majority of the general public not being aware of the pending changes. Instead, the focus is on the pending pandemic treaty, which I believe is by design. Consequently, we the people have very little time to mount a strong opposition, but it is my firmly held belief that we must do so. I believe that we are facing an existential threat to our freedoms. I implore you to do everything in your power to have these proposed amendments withdrawn before they come to a vote this upcoming weekend. Bear in mind this was dated the 23rd of May 2022. Continue. You must defend the interests of our nation. If the proposed amendments are approved, you are empowering unelected, unaccountable officials to steal sovereignty and freedom from the people. This is unacceptable and untenable. I will be contacting you in due course regarding the pandemic treaty. I will be grateful for your urgent response. And yours sincerely, me. It's actually dated the 20th of May, but it's 3 days before, 2022 anyway. That's the date it was done. It was sent on the 23rd, obviously. Now here is Peter Gibson's response. The full letter, I'll read it out completely. Peter Gibson MP, House of Commons, London, Sierra, SW1A0AA. Case reference, Papa Echo 21766. Dated Friday the 27th of May 2022. Mere 4 days later. Dear Andrew, thank you for your email about a potential new international treaty for pandemic preparedness. The COVID-19 pandemic has been one of the greatest challenges to the established international order since the Second World War. A global threat that has required global solutions born out of global cooperation. It has been immensely heartening to have seen the peoples and nations of the world pull together as they have. I pay tribute to all everywhere. Okay. As in the late 1940s were to avert a repeat of the cataclysm of total war, world leaders came together to establish the multilateral system we have today. I think it is reasonably fair to argue that a similar effort is required on the part of world leaders to strengthen preparedness for potential future pandemics. As such, I welcome the suggestion of the Prime Minister, writing with other world leaders last year, that the international community should commit to producing a new international treaty for pandemic preparedness and response. I am told that such a treaty would aim to foster greatly enhanced cooperation in future pandemics by further embedding the principles of shared responsibility and transparency to the multilateral system, and through material improvements to global alert systems, data sharing, research, production and distribution of medical technologies such as vaccines. Discussions are ongoing at the World Health Organization to this end. I know that the UK government will engage with any such proposals, including at the World Health Assembly in May, with a view to a final outcome that learns the lessons of COVID-19. Shame these people didn't learn out. Once again, thank you for taking the time to contact me, and if I can ever be of further assistance to you, then please do not hesitate to contact me again. Yours sincerely, Peter Gibson MP, Member for Parliament, Darlington, and then it's got the address and the website, blah blah blah. You can obviously pause the screen to have a look at that if you were interested. So that's the 2022 data.